Well, today's going to be all about M&P stuff, and yesterday I took a tour of Apex Tactical, so I want to talk about that also. I've got a handful of questions about this gun, and they're kind of all the same questions, so it makes sense just to answer them now. This gun started life, well, a unique situation where I had access to some 40 caliber ammunition, and I did not have a 40 caliber gun. So I decided on an M&P since I'd not owned one before, and I have a lot of people interested in them. They've got a big following. So this is an M&P 2.0 in 40 caliber, and I had it milled for a red dot. And as luck would have it, one of the owners of Apex Tactical emailed me and offered to fit a barrel to it. That sounded really cool, but I was like, plot twist. It's a 9mm, or it's a 40. Could you fit me a 9mm barrel? To which he said, yes. Which definitely breathed new life into this gun. So this has a Apex Tactical 9mm barrel, and they also put in one of their extractors. All I have to do then is just put the appropriate caliber barrel in for that caliber. I asked if I needed to buy 9mm magazines. He said it's probably smart too. You could have a reliability issue shooting 9 in the 40 mags. And let's be real, it's already a pretty good deal. So I did get 9mm mags. I've got a set of 9 mags and a set of 40 mags. And this morning I ordered some Henning mag extensions for, I think they're going to go on the 9mm magazines, maybe half and half. We'll see. So those will be on the way soon. So the questions I get often was, one of them specifically is the extractor. Was that needed? And I asked some questions and I was told no, that it would work fine with just changing to an Apex, like just putting in the 9mm barrel. It would work fine for 9 or 40, but apparently there is some failure rate with Smith & Wesson extractors or the factory M&P extractors. Since this gun was purchased as a police trade-in anyway, let's be real, cop guns normally don't get shot a bunch, and just looking at the slide, there's some holster wear, but it doesn't look that rough. It probably wasn't a high round count gun anyway, but they put an extra extractor in, just honestly just being kind to me. So, full disclosure, I didn't pay for the work for the extractor, the barrel they fit, or they also fit a full send trigger. So, forgot to mention the trigger part. So that made the gun, well, the trigger's good. It's as good as the Walther Dynamic Performance triggers. So anyway, the extractor is not needed. It would work fine either way. And just dropping in one of the 9mm barrels would work for changing this gun between 9 and 40. So now I've got 9 and 40 mags and 2 different barrels, and I can just switch them back and forth. One thing to note, hey, don't try this at home. If you decide to try this at home. When I got home late last night, it was like a little bit after midnight. My wife had a whole stack of packages from UPS just nicely sitting on my desk. And I was excited because I had this holster showed up from Carry Concealment. And I wanted to put together before I go to bed, of course, because it's like, tell Ralphie to go to sleep when he's got that BB gun that he wants to go shoot in the backyard against, like, was it Bart something? Whatever. Anyway, you get new toys, you got to go shoot them, or at least mess around with them. So I wanted to put the rig together. And one thing that's important to notice about this is the holster is actually a 40 caliber holster. The 9mm and 40 slides have a small difference. So this one's from Carry Concealment, talking to the owner. Also, full disclosure, I didn't pay for the holster. He was very kind and sent it to me. This will be my first one I got from him. And he said that the 9 and the 40 have a little bit difference of a slide difference in width. So this holster is set up for a 40 caliber, just in case you're looking at doing the multiple caliber thing yourself. Kind of the fun thing or interesting thing about the holster is there's a magnet in the bottom, down the nose. That's what works as kind of the retention to keep the gun from moving out of the holster. One thing you might notice, this is a 5-inch holster and I have a 4¼ inch gun. So the magnet's not working for this setup, but there's a good chance I'll end up with a 5-inch M&P in the future. So it just made sense to have a holster that will work for either one. Otherwise it would be kind of dumb to get a new holster. But I really like the holster and it fits the gun really, really well. I was full autism mode getting the Boss set up. Luckily I didn't wake my wife up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So this one's set up on a Baller Boss setup, which is my first one of those. So here's the regular Boss hanger. system that's been out for quite a while. Normally it's attached with two little kind of spacers, but with this one, this baller setup, it's an attachment method that you attach to each of the parts, the Y plate and the hanger itself, and it's got kind of a little ball joint in the middle. I don't know if I find a good angle or not, but when you loosen those little screws, it allows the whole thing to pivot. So you just move it around to wherever you want it, tighten those two screws down, and it holds it in place. For getting it set up, I kind of just got it where it was, like, it took some effort to move it, but it wasn't super loose. Then I could do a little bit of dry fire, kind of position the gun in it. Then when I got it where I thought I wanted it, take the rig off, tighten it down a little bit more, snug them up, then do some dry fires, like, yep, more, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, then adjust a little bit and back and forth. So a little bit of a, fiddling to get it set up, but I think it's going to work fine. So tomorrow will be my first day taking one of those to the range. The only other change that I made to this gun so far is the grip. Talon Grip calls this rubber, and I think that's propaganda. This grip, well, for Talon Grip, I like their stuff for Glock, and the one I normally get is called like granulate maybe, and it looks kind of like skateboard tape. It's pre-cut, very nice. It's $20, so for what it is, it's probably a little bit overpriced, but it's so nice just having a plug and play. You just buy the stuff, get out of the envelope, line it up, hit it with a heat gun, grip the gun hard, activate the heat, do that a few times, you're good to go. So it's like, why wouldn't I get one of these for the M&P? Because I've kind of been back and forth on like, the grip and which backstrap to use. There's a little bit of a step between these two. So Talon just has one grip texture, and they call it rubber. And the colors are just black or moss. So I got the rubber one in black, and this is not rubber. It has about the aggression of cardboard. I went ahead and put it on anyway just to see what I'd think, and it's almost more slippery than what the factory grip is. The only thing I like is that it's added just a bit of diameter to the grip, and it makes that transition from where the backstrap is to not a lot less. Overall, I think it's going to have to go because there's just no traction, and yeah, rubber, I guess, but honestly, it's not very impressive. So that's a bit of a disappointment. Normally I like Talon stuff. This one I would definitely avoid and not buy one with the rubber grip texture. Well, the other part I want to talk about is, like I said, I got to visit Apex Tactical Factory yesterday, and I got to go to lunch with one of the co-owners, which was fun to just pick his mind on the whys, the ins and outs, a little bit of inside baseball, asking questions about M&Ps, Glocks, that kind of stuff. So hopefully I won't say anything that will get me in trouble. I do want to be careful about intellectual properties because obviously there's some stuff they have patents on, but there's some stuff that I think would be kind of interesting to talk about. One of the main questions with M&Ps, because I've used the guns a little bit. This is the first one I've ever owned, and I have some friends that shoot them that speak highly of them. I don't have a ton of experience. And one thing I'd always heard was the M&P 1.0 guns are very, very hit and miss with accuracy. Not really sure why or what's going on, but the barrel, some problem with the barrels, hit and miss, that the 2.0 guns are better. So I asked about that, and I'll be careful how much I answer. I'm actually going to see if I can get one of the co-owners of Apex on the channel in the future, because that way I don't have to worry about saying things I'm not supposed to say, and that maybe I can get him to give some detail or talk through some of the stuff. So I thought it was super interesting. But the part I think I'm okay to share is the way the barrel locks up is the problem. And there's some stuff, Apex has intellectual property and stuff they patented. But to give you an idea, the way the barrel locks up, let's say there could be pressure here at the top of the hood, the underside, it could be back here where the breech face is, it could be underneath in the barrel lugs. So there's a bunch of different places, and so how the pressure is applied and where, how the gun locks and unlocks. For example, which I was asked, like, hey, do you think the 4.5 or the 5-inch guns have more problems? My intuition, I was like, I think it's the 5-inch guns. And it turned out I was correct. And then we kind of went into details for why, and they were talking about frame by frame and slow motion camera and what happens. And there are some apparently M&P 2.0s that are also kind of cursed or are not accurate. So it's a problem with 1 and 2.0 guns both, but kind of just explaining why, which makes sense because you see so many Apex barrels in M&Ps. More than other guns, honestly, because Glocks, once in a while, I'll see aftermarket barrels, but they're normally just a threaded barrel or, a fluted or something kind of cosmetic, but not really because there's a problem with the factory barrel. And with Smith & Wesson's, apparently a fair amount of the 1.0 and 2.0 guns do have issues with the factory barrel. So that's the reason for the aftermarket. Now, if you happen to have one of those guns and you're happy and it's shooting great, then I'm sure you got your gun is fine. But I've been told some of the guns will not hit the same place twice, strictly speaking. So maybe it's a fist-sized group at 10 yards, and it's just kind of inside that cone, but not really the ability to stack shots. And for the majority of gun owners, I'm sure it's okay. But if it's one of those Monday morning or Friday afternoon guns, then if you're a competitive shooter or somebody that wants to shoot really, really accurately, that's where the Apex barrels come in, which explain why I've seen so many of them. The other thing the Apex really has locked down is the triggers, especially for M&Ps. I think this is really I wouldn't say the only game in town, but definitely when you look at aftermarket triggers and M&Ps, it's 9 times out of 10 that I see anyway. If it's aftermarket, it's going to be Apex. If you look at Glock, there are, a handful of them, whether it be you got Apex, Timney, Zev, Tactical Trigger, the new Trigger Tech one. There's a bunch of different companies that have Glock triggers, and I see a wide variety of those in classes. But if it's an M&P, if it's got an aftermarket barrel or aftermarket trigger, it's going to be this setup. It's the Apex stuff. So I think they've really dominated the M&P market. And I asked kind of why this all came about, and it was, which is what I suspected, it was answering a problem that they saw or that people were contacting them for. So the guns had a problem that they had to fix. And that explains why there's not a big issue with like Glock barrels. You don't see all these Apex Glock barrels all over the place because most Glocks out of the box, they shoot just fine, or more accurate than you or I can, offhand at least. Not any kind of nonsense with like a machine rest or anything crazy. So I thought that was really interesting, just digging into the details and kind of the why and talking about the slow motion camera footage and frame by frame and how it locks and unlocks. So it was very cool. I like those details and can be a little bit artistic at times. So I enjoyed that kind of conversation. It was fun just hearing kind of how Apex started. And well, I think like gunsmiths or creators in general, it's always kind of fun just how did the product come about and what fuels new products or what other gun to support. For example, let's talk about Smith & Wesson. There'll always be somebody saying, hey, why don't you make a 10 millimeter of this? Or if you made a 3-inch 10 millimeter, I'd be the first one in line to buy it. But then when they look at Smith & Wesson's like, yeah, okay, so we're going to sell 5 of them, and how much does it cost to T&E and the tooling and how many we make and how long are they going to sit and all this kind of stuff, then it's like, does that actually make sense? So it was interesting just talking to Apex about kind of what determines what they'd support or what guns they're looking at supporting in the future. So I don't want to speculate on that stuff. Well, I won't even speculate. I want to talk about that stuff, but I might see if I can get them on in the future to talk about that. The other part I thought was interesting was kind of starting from them trying to, originally, being a smaller shop, outsourcing stuff to get, parts that they don't have the machinery for done somewhere else. Then they'd get parts in that had to be scrapped. They didn't like the QC on, or they do, forgive me, whichever one I say will be wrong, but the air gauging or like using the micrometer. So the way that they're measuring the tolerances that it wasn't acceptable, it wasn't within the variance or the standards they want. So one of the, I met both the owners, but one of the co-owners said there was a specific product that they were trying to purchase from another vendor, and the other vendor was definitely not giving them a deal that was in their best interest. So Apex just decided to start making it themselves, where they could do it better, cheaper to their variance, which this all makes sense if you have the horsepower behind it to do it. So I found it interesting just what products, kind of how all that stuff works. But not to labor here too long, the point that was the common theme was they're very particular about metal types and how it's the process, like how many times it's cut on the machines and the kind of the whole, like the magic that goes into the parts, but all the way down to choosing what type of metal and how this works better and long lasting and cutting. And Google says to use this one, but that's not actually correct. This is how it started out, and that's why we use this, and all that kind of stuff. I found it very interesting, even if some of it's over my head. I like that stuff. So they were very particular on a couple of things, but it would be steel, the tolerances, where the tolerances are, and how they come up with those figures. So that makes sense for why they're doing stuff like match barrels or their triggers are so consistent. So a reoccurring theme was being meticulous in the components, like the prep, the QC, kind of the final product, which of course I like all that stuff. So I don't know how much more I should say. That's probably enough. I had some other notes, but I will not talk about them. But I do hope to get one of the owners of Apex on the channel. I talked to him a little bit and he seemed okay with it. So I thought it would be fun just coming up with not even necessarily why you should buy Apex or not, but more of education stuff for troubleshooting reliability issues, trigger issues, light strikes. If your gun does this, this is how you fix it. Just because they've seen so many changes and evolutions in their products and the guns over the years, and people do some strange things or just assemble stuff wrong or they don't know. For example, like milling guns for optics. How many issues come around that with people where they mill and cut, take metal off places they shouldn't be, and, all that kind of stuff. I find it super interesting. So hopefully that will be coming to the future. Maybe I'll even put out a feeler for questions if they're willing to do that. If not, I already have a handful of ideas in mind. So anyway, that's an update on the M&P, what's going on with that, and very appreciative of the folks at Apex for taking time out, letting me tour the facility, and it's always fun picking people's brains that are very detail oriented about their craft and just kind of the why behind stuff. So appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that kind of nonsense. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it below. If it's something I can answer easily, I'll do that just in a sentence or two. But if it's something more complicated or detailed, then I'll just make a follow-up video talking about it. So appreciate you watching. Have a good day.